On doit commencer, Monsieur Breton.
Mr. Breton, we need to start. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here in the main amphitheater of these rencontres to talk about European defense strategy, which is a very hot topic. Unfortunately, I don't need to explain why. The news reminds us of this question every day. So we're going to continue conversations that were started yesterday evening with the intervention of the Minister of the Armies, Sébastien Lecornu, and Laurence Boone, who's with us again today, who's really our expert on defense during these rencontres. All European countries agree on the observation that we need to massively increase our defense capacity in order to deal with this major security challenge, war on our continent, the need to support Ukraine, and perhaps to defend other allies against Russian aggression. And in a geopolitical context that's very particular, where our historic ally, the United States, is threatening to withdraw their protection of the European continent. In France, we don't really sometimes understand the huge change of paradigm for the partners of France who used this American support for their defense. They were completely dependent on American support in conventional or nuclear weapons. So everyone agrees about the observation. The problem is, how can we do this, with what budget, when our coffers are empty? So we'll talk about this with our speakers, who are all very familiar with this topic. I'll present them, even if many don't need to be presented. Emmanuel, CHIVA, you're the General Delegate for Armaments at the Ministry of Defense. It's a very strategic position, because with your administration, you're managing weapon armaments programs for our armed forces. Matthieu, LOUVOT, you're in charge of strategy for Airbus. You've been in this group for 15 years, and mostly in Airbus helicopter, which was formerly called Eurocopter. Thierry, BRETON, you're a former European Commissioner for the domestic markets. From 2019 to 2024, you were in charge of defense in particular, and you launched, after the invasion of Ukraine, the first European defense strategy that was followed by others. Florence, you're the former Minister of the Armed Forces in the first Macron presidency, before the change in paradigm that we're talking about, and you'll be able to talk about the contrast with the situation at the time and the change represented by the war in Ukraine. And you're currently the President of the Board of Directors of Air France KLM. Olivier, SCALABRE, you're the director of BCG France as a consultancy firm. You're specialized in industry, and you've worked with many clients in aeronautics and defense. And lastly, but not least, Laurence Boone, who's an economist and member of the Cercle des Économistes, who's our coordinator for this session and the former secretary in charge of the European plan. So you are familiar with this because you were an actor in these topics. Let's begin with with you framing the challenges of this debate. Thank you, Marion. Thank you for being here for what I think will be an animated debate, because what I'm going to say in my framing of the debate, despite the war, despite progress, we've not moved much, and we'll see why. Last week, at NATO, there was an agreement signed where each member of the European Union committed to increase their defense spending to 5 points of GDP, so 3.5 points for military spending, and today we're at roughly 2 points of GDP. The big European project called ReArm EU, it talks about financing, but it doesn't condition it to the purchasing of European arms, and it has not put any conditions on joint purchases made by European countries. We know joint purchases only represent 20% of the purchases made by European states, while they had committed to reaching 35% of these purchases. the financing remains essentially national, because the big programs like the one we call SAFE, that's the ability for each country to borrow with a slightly lower interest rate. But the states don't take out these loans together. And if we look at the programs set up by the commissioner, they're at a smaller scale. And if we only look at defense, we're talking about several billion. And there's also the CHIPS Act and in the Industry Act, but it's very small as joint financing for this sector. And this is the opposite. There's the opposite situation in the U.S., where the defense sector is extremely consolidated. They supply military equipment for the entire United States, and a big part is exported to Europe, even today. Even as we're speaking, many countries are importing American weapons. In Europe, we have big players in the defense industry. In France, particularly, there are big companies and small ones. It's very important for our regions. 4,500 companies that are referenced by the Armaments Ministry. So why am I talking about the lack of coordinated and common financing? Without this coordination, the increase in expenditure will agitate the competition. Industry from one country to the next is in competition. Countries avoid buying. Germany avoids buying French equipment, and France only buys French equipment. So each sends their orders in their countries to their companies. And if we increase the ability to finance, we're going to bring the prices up. We're going to accelerate the rate of production, but this is going to take some time. And we're also going to increase imports because we don't have the possibility to meet all of the demand. We'll be reinventing the wheel sometimes and lacking things at other times. So I think that the NATO agreement, like all of the commitments that were made in Europe, doesn't really change anything, because each time we're staying at a national scale. So what I wanted to say in this framework for the discussion, we have talked a lot about the weapons programs, and we have different ones. But if each country stays only with their national champions and only buys nationally and continues to maintain this competitive structure, we won't rearm at the scale and the speed that we need. And we'll do what we did with defense, what we did with the capital market, just a framework that's not very much implemented. Thank you.
I will now turn to Olivier SCALABRE. You do have a global vision of the domain. The challenge today is quite new for this domain, is it? Thank you, Marion. Well, the context, you reminded us, the context is one war in Europe, the US pulling out, and menace threats that are growing. We're in a context where 60% of defense expenditures goes to other actors than the European actors, as Laurence said. So now, the Europe response at this stage is financial. To have a margin of maneuver 800 billion. This is it's a lot for the top out. It's only a small part of the solution. If we keep buying the same material or product and produce the same equipment at the same cost at the same rate, we will not reach our strategic objective, which is in Europe to have a credible deterrent force vis-à-vis Russia. So let me give you an example with air defense. We have to, we have to produce more, faster, cheaper, and we have to produce European. So air defense, it is the Golden Dome, the Patriot system. It's what goes on today. You probably follow the news between the US and Ukraine, for example. Today we spend 90% of system are US, okay? 90%. So we need to produce more. That is 10 times more, faster. That is 3 times faster, and cheaper. That is 7 times cheaper. This is what we're talking about if we want to reach the strategic objective in terms of defense. So the challenges are huge. The margin to cross is huge. Even if we had the money, we would have to spend it differently. So my conviction is that there is no country can solve such a problem of such a scale alone. You need a consortium, you need an ecosystem of players with industrialists, tech players, supply chain, subcontractors who get together to solve that problem. First thing, there is not one leader there. I think we have to, all energies have to get together. Second thing is that you have to we have to have an open. The European defense industrialists have 25 times less scale than defense players in the US because we spend less than the US. We got 5 times more fragmentation, and because I told you 60% of these expenditures don't even go to the Europeans, they go to the US and other players. So 25 times smaller. So being 25 times smaller, how do you want us to solve the problem alone? So you talked about pulling our programs, defense programs. Well, it might be too difficult to do it in existing. We talk about, 17 or 27. There are programs on submarines, programs on the fighters. There is a lot of parti pris, there are a lot of players, jobs, but I think we have to concentrate on the domains for the future where there is a white page, a blank page. Air defense, it's mainly US, so we have to create everything in Europe. Drones, of course, space, Mr. Breton, you initiated part of these initiatives, and electronic warfare. So in 4 domains we have to be collective and we have to be Europeans. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivier. SCALABRE, producing more quickly, and producing things that we were no longer producing. We talked about this yesterday. Sébastien Lecornu said we need to produce. We were used to doing the high-end production, and now we have to turn back to mass production to be creating more basic weapons. Thinking European isn't always easy, n'est-ce pas, Florence parlait. This year, at the Rencontre Économique, we're talking about confronting the shock of reality. The first reality, the main one, is either Europe faces it or it has to stand back. So given the decisions that were announced here and there, everyone needs to be aware of that. The second reality, the second shock, is that we are now in an era we can call post-democratic if we like, but it's not law or rules that are now being applied between countries. It's money and strength, and it's nothing else than that. And in this context, yes, the world is a dangerous place. I won't explain why. You know very well why, but I will say that it's not simply dangerous because there's a war at the doors of the European Union. It's dangerous because the war is every day within the European Union. We might want to ignore it, but the hybrid war is a reality, and we can accept that our hospital systems be brought down by cyber attacks, but one day this is going to have to be unacceptable. My third point is that the idea according to which defense and security are European topics is not a natural idea for any of us. It's not in our treaties. It's all national competency of the different countries. And it seems that this is continuing. There's a type of strategic blindness which Sactis said, the second commander for NATO. We can no longer believe in the soft commerce of Montesquieu. Look at Russia. We can't believe in the development of international trade as a vector to install democracy everywhere. Look at China. And we can no longer believe, if we ever believe this, that if there are no weapons, there are no wars. Look at Rwanda. Hundreds of thousands of deaths are due to the use of machetes, unfortunately. So none of these prophecies are working. To finish, with a quote that movie aficionados will recognize. In life, there are two categories, those with a loaded gun and those that dig. So it's time to avoid being the ones who dig. For this, we need a sovereign Europe. And that is the heart of my message. That's what the President of the Republic started talking about in September 2017 with a speech at La Sorbonne that has not aged at all. It's still relevant today. He says in terms of defense, our objective has to be autonomous action capacity for Europe alongside NATO. What's missing in Europe today, this is the Europe of defense. It's a common strategic culture. We're unable to act together in a convincing way, and this challenges our credibility as Europeans. As American disengagement is not a progressive one, but a brutal one, I think that it is vital that what hasn't really been shared by Europeans, the second, we cannot face all of this alone. We must work as a federation. I'm not going to come back onto the terminology. I spent 3 years with Thierry alongside me explaining what strategic autonomy means. Why strategic autonomy? Some say, I like being dependent on the U.S. What is strategic culture? What is the Europe of defense, which was a controversial topic in the past? This hasn't stopped us from acting and moving forward. No one's talking about our strategic tool that this is the first way that they were able to diagnose the challenges that we are facing, and I'll let Thierry talk about other aspects. The strategic compass, which is the tool they were using. All of these things must be consolidated, and when I say this, it's because we cannot waste this strategic awakening that is happening in Europe. And if I have time, I'll tell you a story about what European versatility means. And to conclude, I don't know if it's Mr. Trump or Mr. Putin that will definitively awaken Europeans, but I think we need to continue to wake up.
Florence parle. Alors,
today, Europeans are fully awake. You know, the shock of reality is there. We've seen a change in Berlin about massive investment. However, a lot of countries are still in a situation of dependence. So even if they're now awake, they cannot turn their back to the American ally. At the European level, deep, we talked about it, the purchasing procurement program with the money from the European budget for defense purchasing, but it's very slow. EDIP is still being concluded, was you initiated as a commissioner, Thierry Breton. So how can you speed up this at the European level? First, good morning, all of you. You understood. The objectives are clear. Threats have been identified, and it's a mess. It's a mess. Things are not good. In fact, the topic we have now in Europe, Laurence said it, Florence said it, it's not to fight to know who has to make decisions in terms of defense. Defense is the member state, under the hand of the member state, and it will stay like that for at least a generation. So don't touch that. However, on the contrary, what can be part of the pooling represented by the Commission is the defense industries. First mistake, we created a defense commissioner to give some kind of illusion. All of a sudden, the defense was under the control of the Commission. The Commission is there only in charge of industries and defense industries. I was a commissioner to defense industries. So what's the topic for us? What's the issue? It's not money. The issue is to work together. Because you see, when it comes to defense, you know, the general delegate who said better than me, we know how to do everything in Europe. We can do nuclear submarines France being better than others. We know how to have supersonic missiles. We have the best planes. We can do everything. The problem we face is that we still do it in a sort of an arsenal or pile stock logics, but we don't do it fast enough. And the problem is that we don't do it together. So it's not by shouting, not Europe, 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 but by together, 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 that is going to take place. So I faced this issue, this problem, when the European Council came to see us, and said, Mr. Commissioner, we have a problem. We have to deliver 1 million bombshells to Ukraine, and with the collaborators, and for the first time, gun ammunitions, and for the first time in our European history, a European Commissioner, a representative of a European institution, could have access to the entire European industrial defense apparatus, because otherwise it was just blocked by the sort of the ghetto of each member state. And we created a program called ASAP. It's not so rocket science, as we say. So what did we say? For industrialists, industry to do ammunitions, shells, TNT, powder, for them to work together to reduce the chain of value. We have to invite them to do and do you get the companies to work together? I didn't find anything better than co-financing upstream. If you come with 3 companies, 3 countries, with a pooled project, it's not difficult. And you know what? It does work, actually. In Europe, we used to manufacture 600 bombshells per year, gun shells per year. Now it's more than 2.5 million. We caught up with Russia. That's it, done. Noiseless. Why? Because we found the means to we find a way for companies to work together. So we know what to be done. We know. And this is why in the AD program that we developed with my collaborators, it's not just procurement. It's a program made to increase, because this topic, we only have that, to increase our production capacities as quickly as possible, been said as best as possible, with competitiveness and pooling. And in ADIP, we gave the objectives, we defined the means, we defined the scope of the ambition, but we also indicated, with my friend Kaja Kallas, who at the time was First Minister of Estonia, who has replaced our friend Josep Borrell as the High Representative of the European Union, we said that we needed at least 100 million, to get this, to have this instrument that would, by co-financing projects upstream, to pool the resources. And it's indispensable. What is being proposed today, Rearm Europe is nothing. Rearm Europe is just said, if you go at 3.5%, we no longer we don't meet the clauses of the Growth Stability Pact. So we want to have this pooling envelope. Today we propose 100 billion. It is 1.5 billion for bombshells, 600 million. So twice. I mean, come on, let's be serious. This is not serious. So what we need is to, the text, the document has been discussed at the European Parliament. It is reviewed in the European Parliament, member states, and I hope France will not be the last one to mobilize it, to increase this envelope, not to drop our debt, but simply to have the means to work together. And if we do it, and trust me, we will achieve that. But if we don't, well, the 500 billion euros put on the table by Germany will create a air hole, aspiration, black hole, we say some people, and it will be fragmentation again, and we will have missed the objective. It is now, and it is the way it should go.
Merci. Merci Thierry Breton.
Thank you, Thierry Breton. Progress has been made, but it's not very simple. Not simple for industrial companies that are dealing with contradictory information sometimes. Matthieu, LOUVOT, you know these challenges. What's the sticking point today to increase production paces and to meet new needs? Hello, everyone. What's sticking are points that have already been mentioned, and I just want to stress a few of them. In the last 10 years, Europe invested in 20% in defense. 20% of what the Americans were investing in defense. 60% of this budget went to non-European equipment, mostly American and recently Korean. That's 12 times less. And this amount that's 12 times less than the Americans were investing is in 6 programs. So for a given program, Europe puts 70 times less money than the Americans do. In these conditions, you can't be surprised that in sampling conditions, we can't wrap up. There have been a lot of positive changes to deal with these 3 problems. There was a NATO summit with commitments made by different countries. The economic or budgetary capacity to honor their ambitions is still a question, but we're going in the right direction anyway. There have been positive changes on European preference. It's still one-off and symbolic, but for instruments like a DIP, there have been decisions made recently to foster European industry with purchasing of equipment produced 65% in Europe and the design in Europe, so we need to expand this and use it more generally, and we need to reduce fragmentation. This means allowing companies to work more closely together in the aerospace industry and also setting up European programs. European programs work. Airbus is an example of this. It's a civil program, but it's the same reasoning. It's also helicopters and CMBR missiles. It works. We should do more of this. And I agree with what Commissioner Breton said about working in a pooled manner, because this is how we will succeed. We need duality also to have series effects to allow dual production. We have this in Airbus for planes, satellites, or helicopters. We need to export. That's a French notion since the beginning. It's newer in other European countries. It's starting to be understood, and we need visibility. And I'll stop there. We have civil and military activities. We have airlines that are ordering planes for 2028, 2030, 31, and we have a much lower visibility on the military market than on the civil market. We can invest if we can predict the market. We do this every day in the civil market. It's more difficult in the military market, which is more complex. But we need this visibility, and we have a tool that exists as the military programming law in France, but it's not generalized in Europe, either at a pool level or in the main purchasing countries. So if we develop this visibility, I believe that the industry will meet the challenges. And to conclude, Europe has the economic, technological, and human capacity to defend itself against all threats alone. Of course, American support is welcome, but Europe can act alone. We just need to be organized, and that's why I want to conclude on this positive note. I believe we can do it.
Alors, besoin de visibilité.
We need visibility, so we need orders. The governments have been asked in last spring. You did communicate on this this week. It's moving in. Now, you are the heart of this, Mr. CHIVA. So what should be done now? What should be done to go into that direction? So I'll try to be short because I'm... no. 3.4 billion of new orders placed since the beginning of the year. This year, so there was a, well, you know, when you change government, you know, the 12 billion paid since the beginning of the year, and we decreased about 60 million euros per day. So we're catching up somehow, quite rightly. So just observation, and three observation is that we don't start from the same position, initial position. The French technological industrial defense base, you know, is unique, and that in France is hypertrophic. You know, 5,400 SMEs. Why? Because it comes from deterrence. Because we wanted to have strategic industries, and therefore we could build this autonomy vis-à-vis nuclear deterrence. Now, how do we do it? Well, three messages. First, the rearming, or European rearming, or national rearming, should go through cooperations which are reinvented. And in this domain, we don't have time to waste time. Reinvent, what is it? Means that we must accept that we should have countries that will be leaders, or other countries that will follow. We don't we don't have to necessarily have a 27 full agreement, but to have somewhere consider the solution that exists off the shelf, that a country could lead other countries in the satisfaction of needs, in the meeting of needs, you know, the coalition of needs, and to stop doing peacetime cooperation. You know, you put little flags all over the place, and we hope everybody will have the same percentage in the sharing of work. We have to stop that. It doesn't work. Why it doesn't work now in the period in which we are, with this just, you know, the juxtaposition of crisis. Second, there is no European defense pattern without investment on technological security, because today we concentrate on the crisis, but you know, we should not sacrifice to the emergency of crisis the preparation of the future. And the preparation of the future are the technologies signed early on. It is also the high altitude space, quantic technologies, and Europe is doing well, actually in a good position, France as well. We are not today declassified. We have to keep investing. We have to finance innovation. We have to finance the duality of such innovations. Matthieu, Olivier talked about it. It's essential for the relevance of the business model. And third and last message, well, finally, we should go from a notion of sovereignty, we don't know what it means clearly, to a notion which will enhanced sovereignty. What is enhanced sovereignty? It's to be proactive, to be able to anticipate on independence. We talk about Ukraine a lot, about the current crisis, but the first crisis that made us aware of this was the COVID crisis. During the COVID crisis, we realized that we depended on a lot of suppliers. Ukraine crisis showed that we were even more dependent in all domains, actually. At one stage, we couldn't find any mustard in France, you know, and therefore, so less critical than missiles, fair enough. But you know, we have to anticipate on such a critical dependency, and we have to adopt an approach that will make it possible to have a metrics that will guide investment. And finally, when we talk about cooperation, we have to stop talking about just objects. It's not just the tank, it's not just the ship or the plane. They could be also the domains, the industries. The main dependency is in semiconductors, and we can do the best we want. But you know, if overnight we no longer have access to a GPU processor, we can't do AI, including for the defense. So these are the three messages I would like to convey.
We have a lot of things to do. Very concretely, when we say we have to make choices, and we can't always have everyone around the table, everyone participating in the discussion. We've often said that France would say, buy European, but they meant buy French. We want to sell everything to everyone, but we don't want to buy from elsewhere. So in future, we have to say, let's let the Germans build tanks, we'll build something else. Let's all have our national champions. Yes, it was often brought back to a type of French arrogance that's linked to what I said, linked to the fact that this that we know our military complex knows how to do it all, but maybe too much? No, maybe not too much, but not adapted to production speeds today and not adapted to current challenges. It's not a criticism of industry, because for many years now we've been asking them to not go too quickly, because we wanted to ramp up with our engineering. We wanted to maintain them. When there are military programming laws where we had budgets down and no public ordering, now we say you don't know how to build a missile in less than 36 months. Well, we've never asked them to do that in the past. But I would like to say that we have worked for 2 years now, 3 years, on the war economy, the defense economy. So cost, performance, lead time. We need to focus on lead times right now. Cost also, but the war in Ukraine did not downgrade our equipment. We had to produce 155-millimeter shells and mass-produce them. But when we see what happened with Israel and Iran, they don't do it with these types of shells. If we want to remain autonomous, we need to create both sizes. We need to do both. And every now and then we have to accept that others produce better than us and we can follow them. We buy their equipment, and we even accept licensed production on French territory. Similarly, other countries should accept to produce under license. It's not abandoning. Yes, but in Europe. Yes, of course, in Europe. I'm talking about Europe. I thought that was clear. That's a thorny topic. Yes. Without talking about licensed production, in the Bourget, we signed a letter of intention to acquire globalized systems that replace AWACS, and they're made by Saab. So we're in this reasoning to see what is the best product today. A month and a half ago, we got together with all the directors of armaments at the Ministry of the Armies, and each presented 3 products, 3 subsets of systems off the shelf, say who's interested, who wants to develop this. France, like others. And this is a new way of thinking about this cooperation for France, but also for others, thinking that we can work together in, particularly in licensed production systems.
Olivier SCALABRE, when we prepared the roundtable, we talked about new ecosystems, things that could emerge, drones. The principle of winners wins. Let's not make the same mistakes as in the past. You know, we want to create a performing ecosystem where the best wins. Yeah, I'll take a risk in this, in the South. I'll take an analogy with the PSG, the Paris soccer team. Well, the PSG lost a lot before he won. We'd made 4 changes could inspire the European defense. First change is Luis Enrique came, so there was a coach which gave a new visibility, opened the field, and maybe you could be the. I think what we need is that there should be some countries. There is no European Union who should do things there. It's a multilateralism with a few countries that get together, agree, which pool volumes, which pool needs in the long term, and who give visibility. And for this, the procurement agencies, such as DGA in France, has a key role to play to give this homogeneity, normalization, visibility. First change with the purpose is to win the Champions League. Second, the PSG pulled the stars out. He got the best in each of the domain, which are the rural teamwork, and there it is the star states who think they can do everything. Well, that's not reality. This is not the way we're going to win. If I take the example on air defense, the long range is the French and the Italians. Medium range would be probably Germans and Swedish. So they have to work together. You know, we have to take the best in each category and make them work together. Then PSG got young players. Mean age PSG is 24, which is the youngest team of the final phase of championship of the Champions League. And the young and then the startups in defense, you know, the tech. In the tech, we do have them in the US and the real 30 billion capitalization. They're winning call for tenders from Lockheed Martin. In Europe, we got a few. They don't have the critical side. They have to join the team. We have to get them involved because they will help us go faster, put more tech, more AI, and transform the world of defense. And finally, we need a bench to have the substitutes who should be able to join during the match. Well, you know, in France, if we take this example, 75% of subcontractors are actually the ETI, 10 million on average of the turnover. So scaling up to 10 times 10, you know, it's very difficult. So we need to consolidate this supply chain, so they should be the players on the bench, but they can actually get on the pitch. So, Marion, to answer your question, I think don't push or don't force the ecosystems. What killed cooperation, each state will put its champion and a geographical feedback. If I put so much, I have to get so much back. I think we need to see the demand and let ecosystems, we set a few rules, the startups, industrialists who can cooperate, let them get trained, and the winners wins, the cheapest, more performing, cheapest, he gets the contract. You have a reaction. I would like to give Florence Parly.
So to finish the football metaphor, today, can you see examples of European countries that are ready to make difficult decisions at a political level? Are they ready to kick the ball to someone else? I don't practice this game on a daily basis, but I do observe it. What I can say, as you said just now, we must have some simple principles that dominate. There are two, and they were clearly stated in 2017 by Angela Merkel and Emmanuel Macron. Firstly, to succeed in Europe and to work together on programs, we have to accept that it's the best athlete, not just a question of state, it's a question of industrial companies, so that we have all the chances of winning. So European programs are not there to allow everyone to take inexpensive money and to make up lost time on a technological and economic level. The second principle is to have one person in charge, someone who's managing the program, because these are not things that we can do easily. So to come back to more recent news, thanks to the initiatives that were taken by Thierry BRETON and the European Commission in the aerospace sector, we have a program called Iris Carré that's absolutely essential for European autonomy, not only for defense, but also in the civil field. For the time being, there's only one true actor at a global level called Starlink, and it was said yesterday very clearly, Starlink can turn the tap off at any moment. So it's not a sovereign solution for Europe. And so we must now have a program pilot who can manage complex programs in the long term. And of course, it has to be the best industrial companies that meet the needs of the program. Right now, things are in play for it to work, but there's a lot of work left to be done. Thierry BRETON, this is your field.
How can we reproduce what was done in space, for example? Well, it took time, but we had a European satellite constellation for defense. Again, I rely on the work done by the 20 member states and 27 defense ministers, including Florence Parly, to work on the white paper on defense white paper. It's called the strategic compass. It was done, it was acted, and it has to be our roadmap. What does it say? It says, among others things, there are 4 domains which are strategic domains. We call them contested spaces or challenged spaces, where it's domains where no country alone can ensure its defense or possibly be offensive. The 4 domains is space, air, cyber, and maritime. So in these 4 domains, which are essential for us, the 27 member states, no country can work alone. So therefore, we've decided for the last 2 years now, 3 years, to get together, it was complicated, and to start working on intergovernmental programs. And I do believe in that, to precisely increase our the work with the defense industry. We did is Iris Square, which is the first sovereign constellation where we'll be able to do connectivity, to intervene in a theater of operation, to do space monitoring from space, and to use quantum technologies to do post-quantic coding and ciphering, and we know how to do that in the intergovernmental way. We've done it already with the Galileo satellite constellation. We apply the same method. Second, air. Of course, we need our own golden dome. We can do it. Of course, we can do it in Europe. We don't need to buy Israeli or US to do it. Now we do have this will. The program exists. Florence, you're right, as you said. Now we have to leadership to do it. Cyberspace. When in cyberspace there is no border, as you know. So we suggested a cyber dome based with 16 the supercomputer SOCs that will be coordinated at the European level, financed at the pool, at the level, not just one country, and they will make it possible to detect early warnings or early threats. And fourth is maritime space. We have the largest maritime exclusivity zone in the world, and no country can do it. So we have to think about that. And now I talk about means and long term. I mean, the army, the militaries in the room may don't like what I'm going to say, but may not like what I'm saying. But how do we do it in the air, in space, in cyber? Well, to have pooled infrastructures that will make it possible to do it, or to group them. We know how to do it in inter-armed system with NATO. So this is the roadmap. But what I'm saying that has been proved. So once the strategy has been established, it has to be deployed, it has to be carried out. What is missing today in Europe, what is missing today in our institutions, is the leadership to implement it immediately. We cannot wait. We know what is to be done. We have to do it. And I said clearly, money will follow, because, of course, will come, because we have the means to get that money, including for those who don't want it to come into the Maastricht criteria. So what's missing for this leadership?
If we're not convinced of the need for leadership, just listen to the American Defense Secretary. It was a month ago in Singapore. He was speaking to the Asian Pacific zone countries. He said, look, we're here to defend you against China. Either you're with us or against us. And for this, all you have to do is buy off the shelf. American industry has everything you need. And we'll set up factories and workshops in your respective countries. So imagine what is true for Pacific Asia is also true for Europe. So if we're not already convinced that we need to move forward very quickly with firm intergovernmental leadership, I think what I said in the introduction will occur, and that will be that Europe will disappear. Matthieu, LOUVOT, for the export, what are the arguments that you need to promote a European industry? I don't think we're missing much. I think for defense, yes, perhaps the depth of production that American industry has, we're not comparing similar volumes. If you produce 70 planes or 100 planes per year, finding 10 or 20 to export is easier than when you're only producing 20. Production modifications are not the same. But for export, what we're missing the most is a unity in European countries in cooperation programs to have the same vision of export and to not have export licenses from 7 different European countries with 7 different visions. So we need to align our geopolitical view on export. I think that's the only thing that's really missing. For the rest, we're well equipped, and European industry has had to export, and I think that we're more motivated than the Americans to do this. I just want to answer a couple of points that were raised. To come back to the French football team metaphor, I believe that you put Kylian Mbappé in the reference. But let's be careful about startups. It's a very important vector for innovation, but in a sector with mostly national financing, it could turn to a race between small national horses, and we're missing the will to work together. This could lead to fragmentation, so we have to develop it. But startups with a European footprint that are based in several European countries would be more simple than monolithic startups focused on a single country. Of course, the best athlete is vital, and it works better with a leader, and that's where the consolidation of companies can help in the execution of programs. when a company is consolidated, by definition, you can have European programs with a single leader. So we'll conclude, and just to leave you the time to ask a few questions if you like. So a need for visibility, for leadership, for cooperation. That's a lot for 27 countries that are not used to lining up on these types of topics. If you have any questions, raise your hands and someone will bring a microphone to you. I just want to ask you to keep it very short. We only have 3 minutes. Questions, please, not statements.
Bonjour,
Madame Barthet, food strategy is great because I do it in Mali. I integrate young people in the Mali Air Force. Question, Madam. I'd like to know how you see this integration of this so that they could have a global strategy and to target the best. I suppose that's for you, yes. Concerning the young player with the startups, well, Matthieu talked about it today. AI has a major impact on defense. In drones and in the command centers where we got the 300 vision of the battle plan this AI has to be made dynamic, and in startup mode we have to reduce the cycle by 3 or 4. So those new startups that have to be taken in where there must be a European footprint straight from the start. They have to emerge. Industrialists themselves have incubators. They kick off, they launch these incubators by young startups. AI anywhere in tech are fundamental in this new team. We don't want to oppose startup and major groups. So, other questions in the room on this topic? I see hands over there. Could we have the microphone? To all of you, I agree with what you said. Strategic vision. Now, how is it compatible with the new NATO agreement signed last week? Just one word. What happened is nevertheless very important, because we know that we had to spend more than 2% in defense. We did not do it. Now we have a commitment not of 5, but 3.5% within 10 years. Now the depth you're referring to is given by this perspective, because now, well, of course, the members of NATO will have to follow that objective, which is a very ambitious one, very ambitious goal. Today we spend 320 billion euros per year in Europe for defense. If we all follow the objective, in 10 years, we will be at 750 billion. We'll be almost close to the US. And we will have, at last, we will have created a European NATO pillar of a significance which should be close to the US one. And this is what we need to do. It gives us depth. It gives us weight to our companies, and again, we clearly have to push them to increase their production capacities, because if we don't do it, this depth will, of course, benefit the US or elsewhere.
But it's not just a question of cash. We can spend the money properly, or we can spend it poorly. So if we continue in a much more national way without coordination, it would be an extreme weight on our European taxpayers without much return. But if we do what we drew out today, the effectiveness of each euro spent would be much higher. I think we'll stop there. Thank you all. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to Laurence Boone, who coordinated this session with me, and enjoy the rest of the day.